Nearly 200 countries are moving forward with new rules meant to curb climate change and keep the Paris Climate Agreement alive. They're calling it the Paris Rule Book, but not everybody's happy about this. Let's have a look at what's in it and what didn't make it. The agreement requires every country that signed on to it to use the same standards to measure emissions and to track climate policies. That's a big step. It also calls on countries to step up their plans to cut emissions ahead of the next set of talks, which are starting in 2020. One of the most significant parts of this is a section on transparency, which sets a timeline for countries to update each other and includes guidelines for the type of information that countries must disclose, like sources of harmful emissions and how they are analyzed. Okay, what's not included in this? Well, developing countries that hope to get a robust promise from rich nations about the kind of aid they'll get in combating climate change walked away disappointed. That discussion was postponed. The conference also tabled a discussion about carbon trading rules, a system that issues carbon credits to developing nations that cut emissions. And while a number of delegates wanted to formally endorse a major climate change report that was issued by the United Nations in October, participants opted instead to express, quote, appreciation and gratitude for the findings. The Earth is warming, and we're expressing appreciation and gratitude for the findings. One last point. Despite President Trump's vow to abandon the Paris Agreement, the United States was at this conference and did agree to follow this new Paris rulebook. Okay, joining me now is Katharine Hayhoe, the director of the Climate Science Center at Texas Tech. She also co-authored a November report on climate change. Katharine, thank you for being with us.
My pleasure.
Do you, is this rulebook in your world, does that feel like a success?
It is very much needed because the Paris Agreement is like a potluck where every country is bringing a different dish to the table. And if one country is bringing an apple pie and another one's bringing a different type of apple pie, you want to make sure they all have the right number of apples in them, so to speak.
That's a good way to think about it. So in your mind, I thought the thing that I took away that I thought was the most important was this uniformity or standards. But what do you think was the most important thing that came out of these negotiations? And also, what do you think is the most important thing that was left out?
That's a great question. We know that the poorest countries in the world are disproportionately suffering the greatest impacts, those who have done the least to contribute to the problem. So from my own perspective, I think it is really important to remember that there is a lot of suffering already going on today that will get worse and worse the more the planet warms. But on the other hand, it's encouraging to see that countries are moving ahead because although the Paris Agreement was very ambitious, it didn't have a lot of concrete detail. And so now the countries are moving ahead to add that detail because you really do need to know the ingredients of every dish that's on that potluck table. And you need to know that we have enough food, so to speak, enough carbon emission reductions to actually hit the target.
Okay, so that's an advantage. I will say there's a new poll. This always confuses me. There's a new NBC Wall Street Journal poll on climate change. I never understand why this is partisan, right? I don't understand. We're breathing the same air why this is partisan. But it says 71% of Democrats believe that climate change is serious and requires immediate action. 15% of Republicans agree with that sentiment. What kind of challenge does this pose for you as a researcher? Because I can't imagine you were thinking your research is partisan, but it seems to be appealing to people of a political stripe as opposed to everybody.
I completely agree. A thermometer is not Democrat or Republican. It doesn't give us a different number depending on how we vote. But when we act as if it does, we are making decisions that are not informed by the facts. And when we are making decisions that affect millions and hundreds of millions of people, then we can potentially be harmed by that. The reality is that climate is changing. Humans are responsible. We've checked over 150 years, and we really are sure about that. And the impacts are serious and increasingly becoming dangerous. But we have to act, and that's where the politics comes in. We need robust bipartisan discussions and debates over what the most appropriate solutions are.
All right, then we're going to continue this conversation another time about how we achieve that political action. Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.